Real Talk with Rajan.
Hello world and welcome back to Real Talk with Rajan, where nothing's off limits. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with me and I appreciate that. I am your host, Rajan Lewis. Now here on Real Talk, anything is debatable, so in any given week we could be discussing anything from sports to music to politics. You name it, we'll discuss it. Now let's get it cracking. Now, a lot of y'all can't hear the music in the background, but if you can hear the music in the background, it's made by my homeboy, Digger Jones, aka Daniel Laurie, in a song called Jazz Lounge. It's just a track that I love because it sets the tone for the show, and it really, sets the mood for what I want to do in the show, man. I really love what we get to do here and what it's going to be. So, for those who are new to the show, I break down the show into sections. The first part of the show is my current events and topics. The second segment of my show is normally my relationships or family segment, followed by the audience question segment. If you would like to call in during our audience question segment of the show, please write down this number. It's 843-900-6847. That's 843-900-6847. And the lines normally open up around 7:30. I also want to say a special thank you to my Periscope viewers who are watching all over the world. So if you are watching this show on Periscope, thank you so much. If you have not followed me on Periscope, my Periscope, which is also my Twitter, is Real Talk Rajan. You can follow me there and keep up with what's going on. So let's go ahead and get right into it. And I want to go ahead and get started where everybody knows I'm pretty much planning on getting started. All right? Kanye. All right? One, I like to start off by saying that on previous shows, I made a point of it to express the importance of giving people a chance, right? Namely Kanye West. We have watched his journey, and let me go ahead and share this out. All right. Sorry, sharing this out. All right. So, on this show, matter of fact, just last time I did this show, I was talking about the fact that we as the American people, we as purveyors of the culture, whether it be hip hop or American or otherwise, cannot get to a place where we bash someone simply for disagreeing with public consensus. Public consensus is that we don't love President Trump, right? Now, and that's okay that we feel that way, right? It's okay that we feel that way, that we don't love President Trump. But Kanye West has a right to feel differently. But what actually has happened, what has happened recently, which has really brought more attention to Kanye West, which of course was his goal, was for him to meet with Donald Trump. Now, this was not the first time that he's met with Donald Trump. He's met with Donald Trump in prior times. And when he's met with Donald Trump, it's been met with opposition. I think this time's a little bit different. And I'm going to tell you why I think it was a little bit different. My screen just went out. I don't know what's going on my screen, but all right. This time was a little bit different. And it was different because this time it led to a lot of discussions because we got to actually see the inside of the conversation. Up until this point, it was really a lot of conjecture and there was just a lot of discussion around what they could have been talking about. People said, well, maybe Kanye West was doing this. Maybe Kanye West was doing that. Maybe his plan was to do this. Maybe his plan was to do that. None of us actually knew what the discussions were about. None of us knew what they were discussing at all. We just were all making assumptions based on the fact that, one, we know that Kanye West is, he courts attention at all costs. He's the P.T. Barnum of our day. If you don't know who P.T. Barnum is, Barnum and Bailey Circus, look him up. I don't have time to do the backstory on that. But he definitely, where is that? Sorry. So Kanye goes in to meet with President Trump. And he talks about several things. All right. So he talks about several things in there. And I want to hit on these things that he talked about and how I believe they are being received, how they're being received, and why they're being received in the way that they are. So I want to go through pretty much point by point in the things that he talked about, right? Um, Sorry with all the ums too. That's really not my thing. So President Trump starts out talking about Kim Kardashian's visit and prison reform, right? So he says that Kim came in and talked to her about Miss Johnson, and they got her out because she was being fairly untreated. She's a political prisoner. She was one of the people who Kim Kardashian did go in, and she was the one person that did benefit from Kim Kardashian's discussion with President Trump about prison reform. And for that, kudos to Kim Kardashian. Kudos to President Trump for doing the right thing. I don't, it's like I think Chris Rock has a skit once that he said you don't get an award for doing what you're supposed to do. But anyway, so he did something that wasn't done before. He got this young lady out of prison, and now he says and so then he says Kanye West had brought in Larry Hoover's lawyer. So this is the first point that a lot of people in the community latched onto. Kanye West says, yeah, we have Larry Hoover's lawyer with us today, and it's a prisoner that was focused on. He has 6 life sentences, and they have him next to the Unabomber doing a 23-1. All right, so he went in. I guess one of his points of going in there was to talk about the release of Larry Hoover. All right, now if you don't know who Larry Hoover is was one of the most notorious drug dealers or kingpins in the history of our country. Yeah, so while he was in prison for being one of the biggest kingpins in the history of our country, he also got into a situation where he had been trying to get weapons to attack the U.S., I believe, and like, so yeah, what's up, man? So that was the first thing. Okay, we're going in and we're fighting for kingpins to be released from prison. That's not something I'm here for. I don't know. As the viewer, you may have a different feeling about that, but me, I'm not trying to free the drug kingpins. I'm sorry. Don't sell drugs. It's bad. All right. Do we understand that there are certain situations in our country that have led to people selling drugs? Definitely. Do I think that makes it okay to sell drugs? No. So I'm not here to do that. Okay. The man's 68 years old, so he goes through that. Their major point was that the fact that Larry Hoover got such a tough sentence despite selling drugs and not doing things that the Unabomber did, or people of that nature. So that was the first point. I didn't agree with that point. I didn't think that was a major point to be hung up on. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. The one that where he started getting me was as an educator. He started. I'm not going to talk about the alternate universes. I could talk about the alternate universes, but I'm not going to talk about the alternate universes because the reason that Kanye West said he needed to go in and vouch for Larry Hoover was because in an alternate universe, he's Larry Hoover and Larry Hoover's him. So he has to save Larry Hoover so that when it's him in the alternate universe, Larry Hoover will save him, which makes absolutely no sense to anybody with a lick of common sense. I'm just saying, if that's what we're here riding for, then whatever. Then he goes into talking about how black people are Democrats because of welfare. So I'm going to read the exact statement because I don't want anybody saying I'm putting words in his mouth. I live in the world of reality. I live in the world of speaking a thing that actually happened. I speak to the thing that actually happened. I don't put words in people's mouths. I try not to embellish. I just talk about what was actually done and what was actually said. I don't try to clarify I don't try to I don't put words in people's mouths. I'm not here to expound on what you said because I'm not in your brain, so I don't know what you said. I can only go by what you said. All right. He also said, people expect when you're black to be, people expect that if you're black, you have to be a Democrat. All right. I've had conversations that basically said welfare is the reason why a lot of black people end up being a Democrat, which makes no sense at all because we know that by numbers, a majority of people in our country don't vote. And if we're looking at the demographic of people who use welfare and people the majority, first of all, the majority of welfare in our country does not go to black people. That's the first thing that Kanye West needs to be educated on. And this is one of the main reasons why I have the problems with people like him getting the space to share with the president. It's because Kanye West is not educated about any of these things that he's talking about. About any of these things. All right? He says, sorry, welfare is the reason that a lot of black people end up being a Democrat. They say, first of all, it's a limited amount of jobs, so the fathers lose jobs, and they say, we'll give you more money for having kids in your home. Then we got rid of mental health institutes in the 80s and 90s, and the prison rates just shot up, which one has nothing to do with the other. Being a Democrat has nothing to do with mental health. In fact, being a Democrat has nothing to do with being black, which has nothing to do with mental health. So he was trying to you ever heard the term, like, heard it said that, like, a dumb person sounds smart to a dumb person? That's all I'm saying. Within a 20-second period, he went from, as a Democrat, they expect you to be black because of welfare. All right? Large stereotypical point that makes absolutely no sense. We'll give you more money for having more kids in your home. Get rid of mental health institutes in the 80s and 90s. That's within 4 sentences. Together, those make no sense. Independently, I'm pretty sure we can make a discussion about the validity of those points in and of themselves. But all he did was mention, like, bullet points, it sounds like. It sounds like he had a sheet of bullet points that he wanted to get through, that he had done no research on, and he just started talking about it. That's what it sounds like to me. Now, you may disagree. You may disagree, all right? I'll come back to that, Mike. I got you. You may disagree. But my point is that within 4 sentences, he hopped from black people are Democrats because of welfare. Untrue. Fathers, they take fathers out of with the limited amount of jobs for fathers. There's a limited amount of jobs for all fathers. Black fathers, white fathers, any fathers. So that wouldn't be a reason to be a Democrat. And then he says we got rid of mental health institutes in the 80s and the 90s, and the prison rates just shot up. Prison rates just shot up. Right. So prison rates shot up, which is true. Mental health institutes. So that point is something that I definitely would agree with when he talked about the fact that fathers not being in the home and mental health institutes needing to be in place. If he would have went in there with specific points targeting those issues, I could have been all the way with him, even meeting with President Trump. And I've even said on this show that if I was called to meet with President Trump, I would definitely go and meet with the president because that's an audience that you have to take that audience to be able to make your point, to be able to express your views. But what you can't do, and it's the same thing that we've run into with the people when the pastors went in there, when the pastors went in and called him the blackest president of all time, or the most pro-black president of all time. Like when people go in there, it's literally you just get an audience with President Trump because you're willing to kiss his butt. I'm not going to go in there and kiss somebody's butt. And he's not going to bring somebody in there who's not just going to kiss his butt. So, and I've made this point, that Kanye West literally could have been in there singing Rapper's Delight, the third verse of Rapper's Delight. And President Trump would have been like, because at the end, all Kanye was going to do was the same thing he always does. You're the best. I just love you so much. And it's like, based on what? He still hasn't made a specific point as to why he supports the president, other than the fact that he's the president. All right? But and then he says, well, I always support the president, whoever the president is. When we know that this is the same guy that said George Bush doesn't care about black people. Well, I dare say that Donald Trump cares about black people a whole lot less than President Bush did. I'm just saying. Just based on actions. I'm sorry. All right. So that was my first key point about, what I disagree with was primarily that thing about welfare. The welfare thing, he was uneducated. Also, there was another video, and I want to come back to this one. There was another video that he was talking, I believe it was in TMZ, that he was talking about the fact that black people are Democrats, but do we know that Democrats wanted to keep slavery and Republicans were the ones that freed the slaves? Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat, was a Republican. So let's talk about that point, because this is something that if we're not that well versed on the history of our country, we don't actually understand how this happened. So yes, the Republican Party freed the slaves. And I'll make this a point. Let me share this out. The Republicans freed the slaves. I'm going to put it out there like this. Republicans, what is that? Oh. All right. So the Republicans freed the slaves, which is true because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Now, what we have to realize is this. Around 1968, I believe it was, we had a president named Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, Lyndon B. Johnson was a Democrat because the Democrats were the party of the South and most of the Republicans were the party of the North. If you go back to Reconstruction, it's something I've been talking about on this show quite frequently. They had something called the Radical Republicans back in the late 1800s. And the Radical Republicans were pretty much the people that got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments passed in Congress and got them added to the Bill of Rights. Those are the Radical Republicans. Those were the people who were anti-slavery. Those are the people that was trying to punish the South. Those are the people who largely went against the South when we're talking about leading up to and after the Civil War. That was the Republican Party at that time. But let's fast forward 100 years to 1968, 1969 time frame, and we have a guy, 1967, 1968 time frame, we have a guy who's the president named President Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson was a Democrat. All right? He was a Democrat. The rest of them, Strom Thurmond, does anybody in here know the history of our state, South Carolina? Because Strom Thurmond, notorious racist, actually, most of the KKK, anyway, notorious racist Strom Thurmond was a Democrat. He was the leader of the Democrat Party, actually. So, as the leader of the Democrat Party, Strom Thurmond led the fight against the civil rights movement, which was being fought very heavily in our country at that time. The Democrats, led by Strom Thurmond, were fighting against the Civil Rights Voting Act. They were fighting against the Civil Rights Voting Act. Because they were fighting against the Civil Rights Voting Act, they did not want any rights added to the Constitution as it pertained to the Civil Rights Voting Act. Any civil rights bills, they were totally against them. But Lyndon B. Johnson, following the lead of President John F. Kennedy, who he was the vice president of, he got those bills passed. He got the Civil Rights Bill passed, and then he got the Voting Rights Act passed. When that happened, the Dixiecrats, as they were called, they were Democrats from the South. They were called Dixiecrats. They all switched parties to the Republican Party. So the people that Kanye West is out here applauding for freeing the slaves are not actually the same party, if we know anything about history. And that's what we have to make sure. That's the points that I'm trying to make about Kanye West. He's not educated in the things that he needs to be educated on to be able to have substantive discussions about these things. So we can say, yeah, out of the 22 minutes of the whole video, because the entire video, and I encourage anybody to watch it. I encourage everybody to watch it. And if you watch it, you will understand what I'm like. We can have a dialogue about it if you watched it. If you haven't watched it, then we can't have a dialogue about it because we'll just be talking about stuff. You be talking about sound bites, and I'll be talking about the whole thing and what actually happened in our country. So that's a big issue. Is that whole thing? Is that whole part right there? So that part. All right. He talked about the Chicago crime rate and the fact that the Chicago crime rate has gone down 20% every year. So if that's the case, then I don't really understand what it is, the point that he was making with that. So I'm just going to leave that alone. The Make America Great Again hat, wearing that, which he has the right to do. If he feels like the Make America Great Again hat gives him superpowers, then by all means he has the right to think that the Make America Great Again hat gives him superpowers. I don't begrudge him that. I don't begrudge him the right to have an opinion on President Trump that is positive. So that's definitely him. The next point that I had an issue with, the Yeezy effect. So he went on to talk about joining Adidas and leading to single-handedly leading to them being 14 $14 billion in the hole, losing $2 billion a year, to now them being having a $38 billion market cap, which he called the Yeezy effect. Now, no other person in economics as it pertains to inside or outside of Adidas has yet referred to anything as the Yeezy effect. In fact, if we go back and look at when Adidas, when Kanye West came out and started talking about Adidas like a month or so ago, Adidas actually came out and made a statement that said Kanye West really has no say-so on anything other than the shoes that he designs with the company. He also said that he became a billionaire off that deal. Now, if Kanye West by himself is worth $1 billion, that means that he's on top. He would be on top of the Forbes list as it becomes hip hop artist. He's not on top of that list, which means that's another lie. Going forward, abolish the 13th Amendment. And I want to make sure I keep sharing these out because I want people to understand that I'm trying to go point for point. I watched the videos. I took it in. I processed the information, and there was just so much I disagree with it. And I want to make sure that I go through it. Abolish the 13th Amendment. I want to go ahead and share that out. All right, we're going to talk about this. All right, we're going to talk about this because these are all key points that Kanye West made. So I want to make sure I address each of these key points because why not? Because it's important. It's important to have a truthful dialogue about what's going on. It's important to have a truthful dialogue about what's going on at all times. It's never a bad time for a good discussion. And if you disagree with me, please, by all means, come in here and say, Rajan, I disagree based on this, this, and this. And I welcome disagreement. Talking Kanye. 13th Amendment. All right, because I've seen lots of videos. I've seen lots of points being made by people about this, and I want to make sure that I address each point as a person who does have education on the subjects. I mean, like that's where I live. I live in an area. I live in a place mentally where I just don't want poor information being put out there. And if ever y'all think that I'm putting out bad information, please shoot me some articles. Let me know where I'm wrong. What am I? Because I never lie to you. But what points did I make that you disagree with that we could disagree with about in a substantive way and have a discussion about it? And that's anything that I talk about. So the 13th Amendment. So let's talk about what the 13th Amendment actually does. Because this is what you're actually supposed to do when you have a dialogue. When you go in to talk to the president, you should have a basis of knowledge from which to talk. If you don't have a basis of knowledge from which to speak, then don't speak. That's really where I live when it comes to this stuff. I'm not going to talk to you about something I don't know. If there's something I don't know, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, I'll get back to you. In fact, I probably won't even bring it up on this show because of the fact that I don't have the knowledge by which to discuss it. So let's talk about the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except in cases where somebody commits a crime and then they can be forced to work involuntarily. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. That if you commit a crime, they should be able to force you to work. Now, do I agree with privately owned prisons? You best believe I do not. I think that all private, like, you should not be able to own a prison. The prison should be that's government territory. So the government should not be in bed with corporations, like at all. And that happens way too often. And so that's something, privately owned prisons is something that I'm totally against. So when Kanye talked about that, I agreed with that. But abolishing the 13th Amendment, so what do you think people in prison are going to do if they're not forced to work voluntarily? All right? But my baby, love you. All right, let's talk about what the 13th Amendment actually does, though. It abolished slavery. So up until 1865 in our country, slavery was legal. It was completely legal to own another human being. The 13th Amendment stopped that from happening. We should abolish that in this era, where we can't even get people to stop shooting innocent people. we should get rid of the one thing that stops you from being able to say, oh, I own this person. That's what we're vouching for. Now, if you were to say, let's amend the 13th Amendment to make sure that we can't have privately owned prisons where people are benefiting financially from people committing crimes, then sure, I'm with that. When you say abolish the 13th Amendment, abolish means get rid of. What next? You want to get rid of the Voters' Right Act? You get rid of the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment? Because when they got rid of the 14th Amendment in the South, when they stopped enforcing the 14th Amendment in the South, do you know what we got? The Jim Crow laws. We got the Jim Crow laws when they stopped enforcing the 14th Amendment. So is that something we're getting jiggy with too? Again, you have to understand the totality of these statements that are being made. If you don't understand the totality of these statements, it's really hard to stand behind, like when you know this stuff, it's hard to get jiggy with most of the stuff that Kanye was talking about. So that's the only points I'm gonna. Let me make sure that maybe something else that I really wanted to go over from that. 13th Amendment. Bipolar disorder, misdiagnosis, that does happen all the time, and it should not happen. So I think that's something he was. Pitching the I plane, dude. The I plane. We're going into. No. Okay, Juice. So again, ratify or amend. Ratify means to approve. So they've already ratified the 13th Amendment. Amend the 13th Amendment? Definitely. You could definitely, like, I think that, again, my point when it comes to that is privately owned prisons. There needs to be something that says that private corporations cannot own prisons. That needs to be something that's said. I totally agree. With that. That makes absolutely no sense to have it where people can benefit financially from someone going to jail, because that makes it too beneficial to people outside of the government to get into it and to mistreat people, like stuff that we saw in the Lee Correctional Facility, where you had that hunger strike, which I still think is going on at Lee Correctional. So, like, for real, like, that's something that we cannot stand behind. We cannot vouch for that. That is not cool. That's not something we can get behind. But as far as the 13th Amendment, the 13th Amendment is good, y'all. It's good. It's really good. I see some really good some points in here. Let me make sure I get to those. And thank you guys so much for tuning in on Reset. This is Real Talk with Rajon. I'm the host, Rajon Lewis. If this is your first time watching, thank you so much. I really appreciate you tuning in. Let me get to the points. Tracy Dilligard. Both parties are worthless to the black community. Jails are nothing but corporations using us to make money. They're going to serve their time even if it's sitting in a cell. Why should you force somebody to work for free? Do we think that people just sitting in a cell is good for them in prison? Do we think that's how rehabilitation happens? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I mean, I would have to know what you're putting in place of involuntary work. And when I'm talking about work, I'm not talking about like making license plates and stuff. I'm talking about, because a lot of those guys get paid for that stuff too. Like, they don't get paid a whole lot, but they get paid. I mean, you know. But I do agree that I think that the two-party system is really bad for our country. I don't think that we should have parties. I think that we should totally do away with political parties. So anyway, that's why I totally disagree with the position that Kanye is taking on politics. His motive is totally self-centered. The fashion industry is blackballing Kanye. He is so desperate to get major manufacturing in the States that he will sell out his people and our communities to promote his brand and his business. And I totally agree with that point. Kanye West does things for one reason and one reason only, because it benefits Kanye West. Kanye West isn't out here talking to the president because he thinks that it's going to benefit the country. He's not. He's trying to sell something. He's trying to make money. He's willing to lie, cheat, steal, whatever it takes to improve his brand. And the more he does it, the more he hurts himself. The I plane. The I plane. The I plane. I'm just the I plane. The I plane. Like the I plane. He pitched the I plane. He pitched a hydrogen plane, a hydrogen fuel plane that would carry the president. Kanye West, y'all. And this is why it's important to have conversations about these things and get educated about these things that he's talking about. Because to me, what he did didn't benefit anybody in the black community. And maybe you think it did. But I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. So I want to talk about this really quickly too. That entire video is 22 minutes. It was 22 minutes. 22 minutes. 22 minutes. And in 22 minutes, I found about 20 to 25 seconds of it cumulative that I agreed with. I already talked about the fact that probably on prisons. I talked about the fact that we need to improve education. Well, I've talked about that as a teacher many times. I've talked about the fact that prison reform needs to happen. I've spoken about that many times. 15 seconds. 15, maybe 20 seconds that I agreed with. The rest of it, and most people will tell you that they disagree with most of what Kanye said. Most people are telling you that. So most people will tell you that they disagree with what most of what Kanye said. Love you too, Locuz. If most people disagree with most of what Kanye said, that means that we probably agree on this, right? And we probably agree that about 15 seconds of it was good. I want to show you something though. I want to tell you why it's not okay to just agree wholeheartedly with somebody and to back somebody because you agree with one part of what they said. And I'm going to tell you this. So I'm going to start this way. Do you agree that our country should have jobs returned to the country? Probably, right? I think that's something we all agree on. Do we agree that we should have a strong military? We all agree on that, right? Those are two things that I think we all agree. I don't think anybody would disagree with me that our country should have a strong government. A strong military. Nobody in our country disagrees that our country should have jobs, things manufactured here in our country and not overseas. I believe that most people agree that we should have strong ties. No, with those two. So those two things, if you agree with those two things, and you want to just nitpick and pick one or two things and then agree with somebody wholeheartedly, then you should have voted for Trump. Because Trump agreed with those two things. And you agree with him on those two things. If you can pick those two things out and from the entirety of what President Trump represents to most people that I speak to, then you should have voted for President Trump. Guess who else had those same ideas? Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler's primary platform was that our country needs to be strong. We have a strong military. We should have a strong military. We should be able to defend ourselves from foreign attacks. And our economy needs to be strong. So if you wanted to pick one or two or three things that you agree with, well, you actually agree with some things with Adolf Hitler as well. But when you look at the whole picture, when you look at everything that Adolf Hitler talked about, you sit there and you realize this guy's a nut. And if you listen to everything that President Trump talks about and everything that President Trump does, you listen to him and really realize this guy isn't for me. So I can't listen to one, two, or three things that you say and agree with them and then agree with you as a whole. I can't. Because I have to look at the larger picture. Because I have education on the topics that I'm talking about. And when you have education on you cannot We are not living in an era where you can look at 1, 2, or 3 things and decide whether or not you're going to vote for somebody. I've spoken about that on this show so many times. Like, we have to get past the point where we look at 20 seconds of a 30-minute video and decide, oh yeah, I agree. Or we look at 3 lines from an article, or we look at a meme, and from this meme we decide, I agree with this person and I'm going to back this person 100%. Because when you do that, you leave yourself liable to be following a crazy person or a nut. I'm just telling you, like, these are the times that we are living in. We have to be smarter. There were people who stood in a rally, and listened to a man. This man was talking about, we need to make our country strong. We need to protect our people. We need a strong military. And that man went on to start the Holocaust. We got to be smarter than this, y'all. Like I'm dead serious, and I really am saying this. I'm trying not to say this in judgment. I'm just saying we have to dig deeper. If you dig deeper and you agree with him, with everything that he's talking about, cool. But don't tell me I disagree with most of what he says, but I agree with these 3 points, and because I agree with these 3 points, then he's right. Because that doesn't make him right. It doesn't make him right. It makes him a person with an opinion. And there's a lot of us. And you can disagree with my opinion. You can disagree with my opinion. I have no problem with that. And I always welcome people. If you would like to sit down and have a discussion about where we disagree, not where I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. Because if you disagree with me, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just going to tell you that I disagree based on facts. And I will present fact after fact after fact that forms my opinion. But that doesn't make my opinion right. Because maybe you have different facts that I don't have access to yet or I haven't considered yet. I'm always open to sitting down for a cup of coffee and having that discussion with somebody. If you disagree with me, then let's sit down, let's talk about it. Or you can leave a comment right here in the comment section. I always welcome that. If you want to inbox me and say, Rajan, I completely disagree with you based on these points, then let's talk about that. But I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you that you're blind. I'm not going to tell you that you're a sheep. I'm not going to tell you that you're brainwashed. I'm not going to use any of those terms that people often use when we disagree. I'm not. I'm not going to call you a coon. I'm not going to call you a buck dancer. I'm not going to call you the spook that's still set by the door. I'm not going to call you any of those things. Because what we need right now is more love, more respect for one another. And when we have that respect for one another, when we have a respect for one another, we can have discussions. See, and I'm going to close on this. Each person that watches my show, and each person I see, honestly, everybody I see, everybody that I meet, I consider a brother or a sister in this thing, man. We got to live on this earth together. And when there's so many people, I believe there's last check, there was like 3 trillion people on Earth. Last count I remember, there were like 3 trillion people on Earth. 3 trillion people won't agree on anything. You can't get 10 people to agree on anything. Like if you got 10 people that want to go to get someone something to eat, you have 5 people that want to go here, 3 people want to go here, two people that want to go here. Like that's how that happens. So I can't expect everybody to agree on everything. But what I think we can do, what I think we definitely can do, is find ways to discuss our disagreements respectfully. I have brothers and sisters all over this thing that I disagree with all the time. And I have no problem sitting down and talking to any of you guys. Rather it be here on the show, at a coffee shop, at school, in the grocery store, it doesn't matter. Because I'm going to come to you in love, I'm going to come to you in respect. And we're going to talk about the issues that are before us and why I feel the way I do. And then you can tell me why you feel the way you do. And maybe we disagree to disagree, but at least we heard each other out. At least we engage the discussion in a way where both of us could learn something if we just open our ears and close our mouths a little bit. We need more people to listen, less people to talk. All right? Like I really want to see us get there. Let me go back to the comments and then I'm going to close out. Right on, bro. George Walker, thanks for watching. Unfortunately, when a famous black person buck dances in public, it has a trickle-down effect upon average anonymous black people who navigate racist environments on a day-to-day basis. I agree. And that's why Kanye West is dangerous. That's why Kanye West is very dangerous. I got you, B. I'm going to look at that in a second. For the life of me, I cannot understand. Thank you, Montreal, for watching. For the life of me, I can't understand why, when the government wants to speak to the black community, always go for our entertainers, as if black politics and the voice of our people is solely represented by the athletes and entertainers. I'm going to follow it up with this question. Who speaks for white people? Who's the voice of white people? Who is the voice of white people? Somebody tell me, who is the voice of white people? Because I, to this day, do not know who the voice of white people is. I can tell you who the voice of black people have been over time. Whether it been W.B. Du Bois or Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, Malcolm X, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Louis Farrakhan. All these people throughout time have been the voice of the black man, the voice of the black woman, the voice of the black community. Who is the voice of white people? Hannity? I don't believe that. Do you know why I don't believe that? Because I don't believe that any one person can speak for all people. I don't believe that any one person can speak for all people of any demographic at all. Hannity can't even speak for all Republicans. Rush Limbaugh can't speak for all. Like, if we know that we all don't agree on anything, then how can one person be the voice of anything? You know how we speak? With our votes. We speak with our votes. And let me tell you how I know we speak with our votes. And I'm going to go back to history again. This is something I'm going to make a point of to do on my show more often as well. Is to get into the historical context that these things need to be placed in. In 1865, back in 1865 again, when the slaves were freed, the slaves were given no rights until the 14th Amendment was passed, which came later, a couple years later, during Reconstruction. 14th Amendment was passed, then the freedmen were given the rights to be protected from discrimination in our country. Then the 15th Amendment came, and blacks were given right to vote. People tried since that time, before and after that time, people have done more things to stop black people from voting than anything else in this country. They will let you sit in their restaurants. They would let them dance in the same music hall. They'll let you go to the same schools. They'll let you drink from their water fountain. They'll let you do all of these things. The last thing that African Americans got in this country was the Civil Rights Voting Act. It was the last thing. And it came 100 years after African American men already had the right to vote. After the right to vote was given to the freed slaves, they put all these things in place to stop the former slaves from being able to vote, to keep African Americans from being able to vote. Poll taxes, literacy tests, all these things were put in place to stop African Americans from voting. Even if we look at right now in the state of Georgia, the state of Florida, and it's another state, I can't remember what the other state was, so I don't want to give another state a bad name. But they are right now trying to do things to close down polling stations so that so people from predominantly African American communities have to drive 50 miles to vote. So if that's the case, you tell me where your vote is. You tell me where your voice is. Your voice is in that booth. Your voice is in that ballot box. That's where the voice of the black community comes from. And I do believe I do believe wholeheartedly that African Americans have been taken for granted by the Democratic Party. Wholeheartedly, I believe it. I also wholeheartedly believe that Republicans ignore African Americans largely, except when we agree with them. And that's not a white, this is fact. This is fact. This is fact. Because the Republican Party seeks to poor white people. They do. They care about poor white people. They care about rich white people. They care about middle class white people. They care about rich black people who often vote Republican. Poor black people, the assumption is that we're going to vote Democrat, and the Democrats don't have to work for our vote. And because the Democrats don't have to work for our vote, they take us for granted. And that can't happen. And how do we fight that? We fight that by stopping the insanity of voting straight ticket. You vote your interests. You vote your interests. If a Republican is saying something that's going to benefit me and my family and my people, then yeah, I'm going to vote for it. I am. I don't vote straight ticket. I don't believe in voting straight ticket. Because nobody just deserves your vote. People should have to earn your vote. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, you should have to earn your vote. But they can't. But we have to be educated about it. It's hard to say that when we're not educated about who's in what places and what they're doing. All these things are public knowledge. All these things are public knowledge. Everything that these guys talk about, everything that these people do, good, bad, or indifferent, is public knowledge. Voter records are public knowledge. It's public knowledge. The things they support, public knowledge. Their platform, public knowledge. All of that you can find by Googling. We can Google everything else. You can Google the latest Cardi B video. Like literally, I saw an article about Cardi B, and I Googled what was the article about, and it pulled up. Guess what else I could pull up? What was going on with Dr. Kavanaugh, with Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford, and I can find out who supported that. And if I think that Judge Kavanaugh getting selected for the getting confirmed for the Supreme Court is a problem, and I voted for those people, then maybe I don't vote for those people anymore. But you know what else happens? When we sit at home, we also vote then too. Because when you don't vote for your interests, you vote against your interests. And that's why Real Talk with John in the next month, leading up to the election, is going to be heavily slanted towards discussions about the issues and the topics and letting you guys know these local politicians who are running for office. I want you guys to be educated about what's going on. I want you guys to get a chance to lay eyes on these candidates. Go to these town hall discussions. Go to these town hall meetings. Go to these city hall meetings. Go to these county council meetings. Go to your local school board meetings. Find out what's happening so that when the elections come, you have a basis of knowledge from which to vote. That's the best way to do things. That's the way you change things. You want money sent to your neighborhood to fix things in your neighborhood? Then that's not a presidential thing, guys. I've seen videos that said, I've seen a meme that says, the hood before Obama, the hood after Obama. And it was the same picture. It was the same thing. Yeah, do you know why? Because President Obama doesn't send money to your neighborhood. Money goes to your neighborhood through your state and local government. So you should be voting for your governor and your mayor, treasurer, solicitor, county council, town council, city council. These people are people that decide. If you don't like the amount of money that's going to your school, school board, superintendent. We got to get educated. Donald Trump is not running everything. We have something called state and local governments. We have local government, state government, federal government. Then the school board has its own government. But if we're not educated about the topics, then it's hard to really make those. We got to get educated. So I'm going to do my part. I'm going to do my part to try to educate the people who watch this show. If there's something you feel like I'm not educated enough about and you want me to know about, my inbox is open all the time. Inbox me an article that you want me to read. I'm always down for information. If you have a book that I should read, send me a book that I should read. I'm here for the knowledge. I'm here for these discussions. I'm here for the opportunity to grow. And I hope that you are as well. I hope that you are as well. I hope that you're open and growing, because that's what this is all about. That's why I always say, come and grow with me. Rajan doesn't have all the answers. And no one person does. But if you want the answers, all answers start with a question. Don't be proud to say, I don't know. I was talking to a group of boys about that this week. Do not be proud to say, I don't know. We are in the times where we cannot bury our head in the sand anymore. There's more and more dangers every day. I'm telling you, politically, we got to get smarter about this stuff. Let me read these comments. Tracy Delagarde, the local politicians aren't even from here. True. How do we destroy this system and build a new one? Because this system is broken and is failing and will continue to fail. Well, we start running for these offices. We start selecting our own people that we're interested in running for office, who are from here, who will do the right thing. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. But when African Americans voted, the most African Americans have ever voted in our country was during the 2008 presidential election, President Obama's first election. And only 45%, not even half black, 45% of African Americans in our country voted. And we got our first black president. Just think about that, y'all. Gina, that's why this year's election is so important. This is your neighborhood election, not the 50 states election. Absolutely. Agreed. We got to get out and vote, y'all. November 6th, please get out and vote. Please get out and vote. Please get out and vote. And with that being said, I'm going to close. Let me pull up my script. All right. Thank you so much for watching this week. And reminder, the show is now split into two parts. Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'll be interviewing my local celebrities. And on Sundays at 7 p.m. is my normal live show. This week's local celebrity spotlight, well, actually, I have multiple ones this week. This week, I actually have, I can't remember all their names. Unique Minds is coming on Thursday. On Wednesday, I have Ray Deasy, who's a local rapper, aspiring artist, as well as he has an event, open mic night at a spot in West Ashley. And I'm also meeting with Be a Mentor executive director, I believe, Alex from Be a Mentor. I can't remember her last name right now. I'm so sorry. If you are doing something in the community that you would like the light shined on, please reach out to me on the Real Talk lines at 843-900-6847. That's 843-900-6847. Or at realtalkwithrajan@gmail.com so that we can discuss getting you on the show. If you'd like to be made aware of when I go live, because sometimes it is unscheduled, please be sure to click on the follow tab on the page and turn on the notifications so that you will know when something new has been posted to the page. In the meantime, please follow me on social media to stay up to date on what's happening with Real Talk. On Twitter, I am at Real Talk Rajan. On Facebook, I am at Real Talk with Rajan. On YouTube, I am at Real Talk with Rajan. On Periscope, shout out to Periscope for watching. Thank you guys so much. I am at Real Talk Rajan. On Instagram, I am at Real Talk Rajan. Please feel free to leave comments, questions, and whatever else you'd like to say in the comment section or the message section. I love reading your messages and getting feedback, even if it's negative. If you watch the show and you like it, say, hey, Rajan, I watched the show. I loved it. Here's why. If you watch the show and you hate it, hey, Rajan, I watched the show. I hated it. And here's why. I am currently accepting invitations. I am currently accepting invitations and speaking engagements and event hosting opportunities. If you'd like for me to speak at or host your event, you can do so through my Facebook page, or you can email me at realtalkwithrajan@gmail.com. Upcoming, I have the Spotlight Awards, which will be taking place on November 17th at the Gilliard Center. We will be honoring 9 local angels who are doing great things in the community in honor of the Emmanuel 9. So if you care about that kind of thing, please come out and check it out. You can get tickets. I'll put the link below. But in closing, always remember that if a man doesn't stand for something, he is bound to fall for anything. Now that's real talk. I'll see y'all on Tuesday. Peace.